Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to round 3 of the 939 Corsa AROC Touring Car Championship 2023. We are here at Snetterton for round 3. An old favourite of mine, actually, this track, and we've just got 5 minutes to go in qualifying. We're on board with Matt Daly at the moment, and I'm pleased to report, as you may be able to see, we have much improved graphical fidelity for this evening stream and continuing on throughout the season, so that is nice to see. Much smoother, much prettier as well. We're on board with Matt Daly at the moment. Things aren't looking quite so pretty for the car up in front there. That was Barry Clayton. Barry Clayton just heading through Nelson there. The back end getting a little bit out of shape, and that is something that is a bit of a trait in AROC racing at this circuit. What a fine circuit it is, Snetterton. It's a good mix of the low-speed corners, technical twisty stuff, as well as those high-speed corner entries as well. Brundle into Nelson provides some fantastic overtaking opportunities, but plenty of opportunity to mess up your race as well. We've certainly seen both of those if you go back a few seasons. So good to be back here at Snetterton. Just under 5 minutes ago, as I've mentioned, and it is Matt Daly who leads this qualifying session. A 153.966 sees him on top at the moment. And then we have to drop back to the 55s to see Will Inglis behind, Jack Hodson, Alan Matthews and Barry Clayton rounding out the top 5 there as Matt Daly brings an end to his stint here. Just behind him there is Jack Hodson, currently running in P3. Having a very nice day out by the looks of things. I should mention the big delay. I do apologise for that. We're a little bit late into qualifying. I was trying to resolve the livery issues that we saw in the previous round there. It seems to be an issue. I'm not able to download the most recent version of this fine Giulietta Veloce here. So, unfortunately, we are missing out on a couple of liveries. I did have a quick go at getting at least some liveries on to some cars, so I can confirm that at the moment. Andy Craker has brought a car out of the shed which is a little bit dusty, shall we say. It hasn't seen the tarmac in quite some time, so I imagine that needed a decent warm-up to get it ready, ship shape and ready for racing once again. As you may well remember, that is of course Colin Knief's fine race car there. So with Colin Knief's race car, Andy, I don't think you have any excuses at all. You should be posting some absolutely blistering laps. Currently running in 6th, so certainly is doing a good job out there. 155.7 is his fastest time at this point in time. We actually have Barry Clayton on the medium compound tyre, so interesting to see already. We've got some slight differences in the setup this early on in the weekend. We usually wouldn't see anyone deviating off the soft until the racing, but Barry's deciding, you know what, for a decent qualifying stint, we need to go for a slightly harder compound of tyre that is going to last a little bit longer through the session and is going to be a little bit more resilient against heat, because heat is certainly a bit of a problem at this high-speed track. As much as, you know, British tracks are famed for their bumpiness, short nature, and the like, there's plenty of British tracks really that are just absolutely, you know, guns blazing, absolutely just really quite fast given how small they are, and that can be a little bit frightening if you're inside the car, but can also work the tyres quite hard as well, because it's high speed met with some really quite tight corners. The likes of Coram here, or the run, as we mentioned, through to Brundle, that is going to work the brakes and the tyres very hard as well. And the run through Williams as well. And there's certainly a good number. In fact, of course, how could we get Rich as well, the first corner? Certainly a good number of high-energy corners here. I imagine we'll see quite an interesting development, particularly in race 1, in terms of what the driver's going to do for the setup. So just 2 minutes to go in this qualifying session then. I believe someone's had a bit of an off here. That is Guy Swarbrick, has done his front wing and has decided to jump straight into the pits. So it's currently predicted a 1:05. What a lap there. Of course, that prediction is a little bit off to reality. It doesn't quite counter in what sectors drivers has passed and if they've dived into the pits or not. It just looks at their relative position on track. So I can tell you that, unfortunately for Guy, he's not going to be able to go 48 seconds faster than the current provisional pole. And yeah, as we were talking about that deviation in setup in the qualifying, here we have with 1:20 to go. So he's only going to get, in fact, will he get one fast lap in? I don't think he will. No, Matt Daly is not going to be able to jump out for another fast lap here, which is a shame, because it would have been very nice to have seen whether or not he could have got those super soft tyres that he's running, as you can see there. the only driver to do so at this point in time, or I believe at any point during this session. He's not going to have a chance to see what they can do out on track, because you're not going to want to run them in the race at all. But he's currently warming up as best as possible. See there the smoke billowing out of the front axle of his car there. Yes, so this could be a little bit of almost like a recce, almost, just seeing if Matt Daly believes that these tyres may be useful at all in the racing, but I can't imagine it will be. I imagine the soft or the medium will be what the drivers decide to go for this weekend. Of course, I think back to the John Dooley Memorial sprint that we had here a little while back now, where tyre compounds were all over the place, and it was anyone's game really. There was a huge spread of pace, but also their durability was certainly rather extreme. That was a mix of cars as well. It was very exciting weekend to commentate over. We had a similar sort of setup, of course, with the Summer Endurance Championship that we have just seen. Apologies for that there. And there is Matt Daly, of course, bringing an end to this qualifying session. So as it stands, it's going to be Matt Daly with pole position here at Snetterton for round 3. There is Alan Matthews enjoying some rallycross. I don't think he is trying to go for a fast lap here, but we do have a few cars behind him that are. So we have now coming across the line in just a moment's time. That doesn't quite matter. There's been a bit of contact between a couple of cars, actually. So let's see. It's Will Inglis, Jack Hodson still to go on track here. No one else improves through the final couple of mini sectors there. No surprise, there's quite a lot going on through the final sector on track, but we're on board now with Will Inglis. His best lap, a 155.1. He's currently potentially looking at a 154. If he can do that, that'll be a nice improvement for him and consolidate P2, because there is his nearest rival, Jack Hodson, just behind him now, heading down the centre straight, and Jack Hodson dives into the pits. So this will be P2 for Will Inglis in the end. That makes it a Matt Daly, Will Inglis front row, Jack Hodgson, Alan Matthews on the second row, and then we have Barry Clayton, Andy Craker on the third, Paul Millman, Guy Strawbrick complete row 4, and then we have Rosie Oliver and Anthony Gray on row 5, and then we have Andrew Brammer rounding out the field there. So that makes for a slightly truncated qualifying session. We'll join you in just a few minutes for race 1 of this doubleheader weekend. So welcome back to the action, ladies and gentlemen. We are here on the grid at Snetterton, ready for what should be two very interesting races indeed. I've never, ever commentated over a dull race at Snetterton. Just over 30 seconds to go now until lights out. And let's have a look at the front end of the grid then. So it is, I suspect, going to be a classic Matt Daly-Willing list battle. For how long, that is the question. Will they scrap it all out in lap one and have to work their way up through the grid, or will we find themselves just breaking away from the field and enjoying a classic bit of racing action? The revs begin to rise then, and it's not long to go. Looking back at the grid here, we have 6 red lights on the gantry. And we are away. Good launch there from the rest of the field. Matt Daly just edging out in front of Willing List, but Willing List, of course, has that inside line for heading into Riches here, which could help him immensely. Just squeezing Matt Daly towards the outside of the track there, asserting his dominance as we run down towards Montreal in just a moment, securing his line nicer there, keeping Matt Daly back at bay there, but goes a little bit wide and exit, in fact, and is now side by side with Matt Daly. There has been a big incident at Montreal there. It is Andy Craker and Alan Matthews. Now we get to play the interesting game of how many times I call Andy Craker Colin Knief, but we still see side by side. Meanwhile, at the front end of the field, it is Willing List and Matt Daly. Only 1/10 of a second, make that 100th in fact, but it is Willing List who has the inside line here, heading up now through Agostini and takes the first position once again now. Matt Daly still hot on his heels though, hunting him down as he does so, using as much of the track as possible, having a brief look around the outside before we head into Williams in just a moment here. But it is still Willing List leading in this battle, but for how long, we ask ourselves, because now we have that big long straight, the Bentley straight, coming up in just a moment. Slipstream can make the difference here, but Matt Daly riding over the curbs here, just got the back end a little bit unsettled in fact, so that might cost him all the way down this long straight, and Willing List can momentarily at least breathe just a little bit easier. Heading now through Nelson and the bomb hole in just a moment. The gap still stands at about half a second. Other gaps closing up further throughout the field here, as we have Paul Millman now very much under pressure from Jack Hodson's good start, in fact, for Paul Millman, who's worked his way up to third. Guy Swarbrick, the only runner then. In fact, no, correct me, I'm wrong there. Anthony Gray as well. But Guy Swarbrick up in 5th on the medium compound of tyre now as we head through Murray's in just a moment's time there. We're going to have a look at the front end of the field once again, because we're heading down that start-finish straight and through to Riches, with still Willing List having the inside line into that first corner, but Matt Daly might be able to get him around the outside under braking here, and he does so. Fantastic move from Matt Daly, not to be outdone though. A little bit of a switchback from Willing List, but not too much he can do from the position that he was in. That was a certainly exciting start to this race. And let's have a look at Barry Clayton, who's worked his way ahead of Guy Swarbrick. Now, Guy Swarbrick might be a little bit under pressure here on those medium compound tyres. Of course, the medium compound tyre, while it does have plenty of benefits later into the race, you know, with that extra durability, that ability to control the temperatures a little bit better, he might have more pace later on into the race, but he's going to suffer big time at the start, especially with a low fuel load. This isn't like Formula 1 where we're expecting to have to make a tyre compound change at some point through the race, so there's no starting on the softs, negating the issues of that heavy fuel load there, and trying to carry on later on with a little bit of better pace on a harder compound. You're going to have to suffer the consequences of that harder compound early on, and Guy Swarbrick may have been doing that. Unfortunately though, for Paul Millman, I don't know if you saw in the background there, he was spat off the track and unfortunately fell all the way to the bottom end of the running. So that's made it a little bit easier for the likes of Barry Clayton, Jack Hodson and Guy Swarbrick now, who've all gained a position. Alan Matthews, meanwhile, is in, where is he now? We haven't quite been able to join him, actually. Here we are now on board with Alan Matthews. He's putting pressure on Guy Swarbrick, in fact, as we headed through Brundle and Nelson, and it was looking rather hairy, as it often does in these front-wheel drive touring cars. Of course, we've got immense loads on the car going in excess of 130 miles an hour down the Bentley straight before you stomp on the brakes to one of the slower parts of the track, where that front axle, which is already doing all of the work in a front-wheel drive car, takes even more weight. That lifts up the back end. The back end starts to get twitchy, and it's one of the prime overtaking spots of the track as well. It is a beautiful part of track design, one of my favourite little features of any British track. is that little corner complex there. Always provides exhilarating action here. As we see who we're on board with at the moment is Andy Craker. Andy Craker looking like he had a little bit of a lock-up, or that may have been the tyres skidding over the track. See, when I swapped out this graphics card, I thought, oh, I'll crank up the visuals. I may have cranked the smoke generation up just a little bit too much, because I think that was just a tyre slightly skimming over the surface. And I don't know if you saw, but it looked like a 19th century steamship. But we're still on board with Andy Craig at this point in time, as he must be feeling a little bit like a cork in the bottle along with Guy Swarbrick here. There are 3 very angry Juliettes behind, hoping to try and get past now as we head through the second sector on this lap. And still are not able to get past, because while Stetson does have plenty of overtaking opportunities and it has lots of technical corners, it's not the widest track on the calendar, that must be said. So no real easy overtaking opportunities, although there are quite a few. Back onto that Bentley straight, and this is where we get to see the difference in the setup of a few of these cars now, as it looks to be out in front. Andy Craker able to break away somewhat, so Guy Swarbrick doing him a little bit of a favour there, as we see Rosie Oliver just having a look up the inside there. Not too much she can do from that position though without compromising her run through Nelson in just a moment's time here, as we see little lock-ups from each corner of the car, of multiple drivers there actually, but just about keeping it under control and keeping it on the tarmac. On board then with our current race leader Matt Daly, and as we suspected, it was certainly an interesting battle between him and Will Inglis, but how long did we have to wait before he was able to settle into a bit of a more comfortable drive and start to break away from the field? And that answer was around about 3 laps, because now he's 3.5 seconds clear of Will Inglis. Certainly not complete relaxation territory, but maybe you can just think about turning the radio on. Of course, the car's not featuring any radios at all. They're all about light weighting. We're back on board though with Guy Swarbrick and Rosie Oliver, as we are heading now down into Palmer in just a moment's time. Yeah, a little bit of a lock-up once again from the back end of Guy Swarbrick's car there. And Rosie Oliver at one point side by side as we headed out of Montreal there, has had to dive back behind Guy. Although Guy looks to be struggling with the grip on those tyres. I'm not sure if either they're still not warmed up, which I'd be surprised by, or if he's actually overworked them somehow. Maybe he's running a slightly more aggressive setup. Either way, saw the amount of the front lock he was having to put on in order to head through the second sector here. It was really quite extreme. So this could be causing him to suffer throughout the twistier parts of the track. As Rosie Oliver there, not sure what happened, if that was just a little bit of a clip of a curb there. Either way, upset the back end of the car and spatter off right up the entry to the Bentley straight, right where you don't want to be going off, in fact, because you're supposed to carry it around about 60, maybe 50, 60, 70 miles an hour worth of momentum onto the Bentley straight, and unfortunately Rosie Oliver is going to be starting from square one there, so he's going to be losing an immense amount of time throughout the final part of the lap as well, and that will confirm her place at the back end of the field. Aboard then with Paul Brady, currently running in 10th then. Not sure what's happened to his race as well, seems to have come a little bit a cropper at some point, but is back on course now. I should mention Paul Miller and Paul Brady, in fact, have made a fairly strong recovery, only a few seconds off the rest of the field now, as we go to look on board with Alan Matthews and Jack Hodson. Jack Hodson has actually had a fairly substantial off here. That was at Riches, and he's had to dive back into the pits, whether that be because it was unrealistic to get back on track or the car was damaged. Either way, what a shame for him. He drops down to 10th now. That makes the job a little bit easier for Alan Matthews, Barry Clayton as well, who are up into third, or up to 4th and 3rd respectively. We're still on board with Barry Clayton at this point in time. Just in front there is Will Inglis. Will Inglis, he might be a little bit disappointed with losing out in that battle for victory, although we saw over 50 minutes ago in this race. But he must be feeling quite content out in second there. Hasn't got too much pressure from the cars behind. Doesn't have to worry too much about what Matt Daly's doing out in front, because if he does so, he might worry about overworking his tyres. So he can just settle in and try and bring home some strong points in this race. Now let's have a look at the pace compared to the cars around him. As actually no, Anthony Gray, Guy Swarbrick seem to have had a bit of a coming together. They're actually in the middle of a battle, so we're going to have a look at that now as we're heading around the final couple of corners. So we head into Murray's in just a moment. It's so far, there's Anthony Gray out in front in that white Giulietta. Guy Swarbrick just behind as we get onto the centre straight now. So Guy Swarbrick might have a little bit of an advantage in terms of a slipstream, although I don't fully know what the setups are looking like. As we head now into Riches once again. I actually had an opportunity to drive the Giulietta for the first time in quite a while recently on a nice Fanatec DD2 based sim setup, and it was rather nice indeed, as Anthony Gray seems to have gone a little bit deep into the corner. That gave Guy Swarbrick a brief opportunity there, but Anthony was able to recover it and pick up the pace once again and keep Guy Swarbrick at bay for now. Both of these drivers actually very interesting, around about the same part of the track, around about the same pace as well, both on the medium compound tyre there, so we might start to see these two swap onto the softs into the next race, although we are yet to see what the end of the race is going to look like. However, at this point in this race, it's looking rather good for Guy Swarbrick, because heading into Hamilton, fantastic move, sees him now in the lead of this battle of two once again. Now we're going to head on to the Bentley Straight in just a moment's time, and I think we could see this battle continuing on. What a fantastic track there. Just look at the axle load that Guy Swarbrick's having to put in order to get around the corner. That must be costing him big time through some of these corners. We'll have to compare that to Anthony Gray as we go on board with him now. He's clearly winning out in terms of straight line speed. He's now got the inside line as well, and says, thank you very much, I'll take 6th position. Hopefully he hasn't compromised himself too much into Nelson there. Hasn't, just about makes it round, but is now ahead of Guy Swarbrick as well. So 6th position for Anthony Gray once again. He says thank you very much, and I'm sure we're going to find another battle between these two continuing on. But yes, I was actually lucky enough to drive the Giulietta TCR on a DD2 setup with some very, I think they are the CSR Elite, whatever the metal-based Fanatec pedals are. I've got the rubber ones. I've got them myself here, where there isn't much clutch or throttle feel, but there's a nice brake pedal on it, and then there's the tier up from that, which has got a gorgeous clutch, a really nice throttle, and a beautiful brake as well, which feels like it adapts to what's going on screen almost. And that was really nice. I really then gelled with this car for the first time. It's such a responsive car to drive. It's obviously front-wheel drive pace. You certainly feel that. The drivers will be negotiating that in the car right now, but given that it's front-wheel drive pace, it drives really nicely, and is so communicative as well. So I'm sure the driver's enjoying driving this car out on track here at Snetterton, and certainly Alan Matthews seems to be enjoying it more than Barry Clayton at this point in time. He's just made his way up into 3rd position, and Alan Matthews chomping away at the podium positions once again, as he's become so accustomed to now. Barry Clayton at this point in time settling in for 4th, but hopefully we see a battle between these two once again, because one of my earliest, most memorable battles that went on in the AROC Racing Leagues was between Alan Matthews and Barry Clayton. They certainly know how to fight each other, and fight each other well, and they will do so here at Snetterton, I am sure. Furthermore, in this race weekend, good to see that Jack Hodgson's actually been able to join once again. We'll get some decent practice in for race 2, the reverse grid race coming up later on. We're just over halfway now through this race, and at this point in time, Willingliss is keeping up with Matt Daly. On that last lap, they were pretty much equal, 155.2, 155.4. So Willingliss just losing out there a little bit, but this lap looking strong for Willingliss once again. Rosie Oliver seems to have had a bit of an issue here, which is a great shame. She was looking rather competitive in the very early stages of this race, but unfortunately that one incident onto the Bentley Straight cost that, I think, in terms of obviously track position but also confidence as well. with no front wing to boot. That certainly won't be. Look at that windscreen as well. She can barely see out of that car. That won't be helping at all. So she's certainly got to work out for it, and will, I imagine, be focusing her efforts more on the reverse grid race coming up later on. Quickest car out on track at this point in time is Matt Daly, who we, of course, haven't had a look at for the past couple of laps. Let's have a look at him once again. There he is, still leading. Else to say, really. So, Will Inglis, 154.9, his best lap so far. So Matt Daly's, of course, I was just being facetious. We'll have a little look at Matt Daly because he's doing an almighty job there. It's a 153.9, his best lap, and that was, of course, the best lap of the race so far. Everyone then fairly competitive. We saw that in qualifying. Everyone was relatively close together, and we are seeing that still in this race, far over half race distance, and we are well within being within one lap, as in the field is still on the lead lap. All of them, even drivers who've had a bit of an off. If we discount Rosie, and sorry Rosie, we are all near enough within 30 seconds of each other. You have to dive down to P6 to beat 34, 35, 36, 37. So yeah, very close field here at Snetterton, and Paul Millman is going to try and make that a little bit closer, because we've got another battle brewing on between Paul Millman and Guy Swarbrick. These two have battled each other plenty of times before now. As we head now down through Coram, that long sweeping right-hander that certainly works out the tyres, just in case they haven't been worked out enough already. Just behind them as well, Paul Brady, he's sat there waiting to pounce in case anything goes awry just in front of him. Matt Daly, clearly listening along, I should mention, has decided, you know what, Reeve, I hear you talking about the fastest lap of the race, so I'm just going to make it a little bit faster once again. Tried to, just about missed out, unfortunately. Purple middle sector, but lost out in sector 3. It's a 153.973. Best lap, a 153.970. So good consistency from Matt Daly there, and unfortunately the camera just left out of position at the wrong point in time to see Paul Millman get ahead of Guy Swarbrick, and did it once again to see Guy Swarbrick get overtaken by Paul Grady as well. In terms of pace then, these three are pretty much neck and neck in the high 57s, mid to high 57s, but Paul Brady there just took a little bit too much curb, and that's the car said, no, don't want that, thank you very much. A little bit of contact actually between him and Guy Swarbrick. Guy Swarbrick was able to carry on, luckily for him, but Paul Brady relents that position once again to Guy Swarbrick, who is now back up into 8th. We're back on board now with Paul Millman. Paul Millman on that soft compound tyre, surrounded by drivers on the medium compound. It's around this stage in the race where if we are going to see a big delta between the soft and the harder tyre runners, it will be around about now, where the soft tyres are working hard all race. The fuel load has started to get lighter, so the medium compound tyres are going to feel a little bit more lively, maybe not quite as lively as the soft tyres would be earlier on in the race, if that makes sense, but that is potentially not the case here, so I think we might start to see some more soft runners in the next race. It's Anthony Gray and Guy Swarbrick at the moment, and they are in the 157 to 158 region, where we still have drivers on the softs in the 155s, although some dipping into the 56s, 57s, maybe the odd 58 as well. You can, of course, follow along with this timing if you so wish. That is aroc.servers.com/live-timing. If you wish to see your favoured driver in a little bit more detail, see what he is doing. We can't quite offer you the Sky Red button service just yet, but I can at least give you as much information as possible as to what each driver is doing through each on a sector-by-sector basis, with a little bit more information surrounding their highest speed, their best lap, their gap to their competitors, number of laps completed, even their network ping, if you are an IT nerd and want to see if you want to maybe, I don't know, make your own little network ping based championship. I can tell you at this point in time, Paul Millman, I'm sorry, you would be losing in that championship. You have the highest ping of a shocking 58 milliseconds, and I'm currently questioning what on earth I'm doing in the commentary box, but we'll carry on. And it is Andy Craker, actually. Oh no, it's not. It's Anthony Gray who wins that with the best internet, so well done. That's 30 milliseconds. So, Anthony Gray currently winning the internet race here in this session. Never before, I think, have I ever fallen to the depths. A new low there for my commentary career, talking about network ping in the middle of a race. That race currently being led then by Matt Daly, 6 seconds clear of Will Inglis. 154.2 on that previous lap, so still actually the fastest car out of track by a fairly safe margin with 5 minutes to go in this race. This has been another Matt Daly masterclass, something we've become quite familiar with. Let's see how that is looking in race 2. Matt Daly, I'm sure, much more happy to think about this race than what went on in the reverse grid race for the single seater round last week at Monza. We'll go back on board once again with Anthony Gray and Paul Millman there, just heading around Montreal at this point in time. No one else really for company, but they are still lapping with each other. In terms of their pace at the moment, it's a 157.4 the last lap for Anthony Gray, and then it's a 156.9 for Paul Millman. That's actually the fastest lap we've seen so far for Paul Millman, likewise for Anthony Gray. So with this lighter fuel load, the times are clearly starting to tumble down. This car responding well then to a lighter, more qualifying-esque load, if you will. Matt Daly matching that as well with a purple Sector 1. We might actually go on board with him to see what a fast race pace time will be looking like. It is an interesting quirk, really, of Snetterton. It's just how long that first sector is. It's a 1 minute 5.8 first sector, and then the second sector a 39.3, and then that third sector is absolutely tiny, sub 10 seconds as well. Losing out for the middle sector then, and setting a purple sector 3. So the middle sector costing him big time, unfortunately, because that was a 155. His best lap at a 153. That could have been quite comfortably into the low 153s on that lap if it had all been strung together. Unfortunately, it wasn't to be. We actually saw Will Inglis gaining a little bit through the middle sector, but losing out once again as we head through to the highest speed sections. Although no, the middle sector is a relatively high-speed part of the track, because Sector 1's rather encumbered by the Palmer through to Williams section. Aside from that, it is of course a dash to the line, and of course if you're not running the 300 layout like we are this weekend, you don't have to worry about the Palmer to Williams section at all. You just go straight from Montreal onto the Bentley Straight, and it is a proper test of your fuel load calculations and your engine as well. Back on board with Matt Daly then, currently predicted a 153. You can of course see the prediction in the bottom left hand corner of the screen. That gives you their best time, their last time, and what the computer predicts their current lap will be. And it's very interesting often to see how that changes throughout the lap, because it gives you a good indication live, mini sector by mini sector, of where the driver is either gaining or losing time. And you can compare that by by looking at how the driver is taking certain apexes, whereas costume time with game time. It's a good way to follow along at home to see just how the drivers can change their driving style to well, really change their lap time, as whether they want to look after their tyres a little bit better at the sacrifice of some lap time, or they want to go all guns blazing for a quali run. You can see that and compare it with that predicted time in the bottom left hand of the screen. Back on to the centre straight then, and it's another purple Sector 1 and Sector 3, but Matt Daly losing out in that second sector, so I imagine that will be down to some type of tyre wear. It is a very interesting quirk there, although I should mention still about 6 cents clear of the rest of the field through that middle sector, so yeah, that looks like it is tyre wear costing Matt Daly through that middle sector, but we have a little bit of battling going on elsewhere in the field. I am pleased to report it is between Anthony Gray and Paul Brady heading through Brundle and Nelson, one of my favourite parts of the track. Paul Brady has the inside line there as we head through the bomb hole and takes P8 back from Anthony Gray. Although Anthony Gray very much hot on his heels now, is heading around Coram, that long sweeping right-hander. There is another overtaking opportunity into Murray's, but it's well defended by Paul Brady there. So we're back onto the centre straight for one last blast, or one of the last couple of blasts down towards Riches in this race. Who's going to win out then? Who has the slightly slipperier car there? It looks to be Paul Brady is able to break away somewhat as we head into that first high-speed right-hander now. Taking a tighter line, Anthony Gray then looking around to see where he can potentially think about putting the pressure on as we head into Montreal. But the answer is nowhere, because Paul Brady making that Giulietta as wide as possible. We're going to run now down through to Palmer. And still, Anthony Gray not quite as close as he needs to be in order to make an overtaking attempt. Meanwhile, Matt Daly leading this race by about 8 seconds now. Is 20 seconds clear of the rest of the field. And late on the brakes there, Anthony Gray. Has he compromised? He has. He was heading through Agostini, and that's cost him big time. He actually dipped onto the grass ever so slightly, and that is not what he needs to do at this stage in the race. Lost his calm just a little bit there, and that has cost him as the timer hit 0. We are now on to the penultimate lap of this race. In fact, we might be on the last. I didn't quite catch when Matt Daly crossed the line there, unfortunately. So, either way, we're at the very end of this race, and Matt Daly leads. And unfortunately for Anthony Gray, he's dropped back just a little bit further than he would like to from Paul Brady. So far then, the new and improved stream setup is certainly earning its stripes in my books. We're discussing this change in setup actually with Alex Smith, who isn't here, of course, in the touring car running this evening. Discussing that with Alex Smith, another fellow computer nerd, and this is, for those of you who might know, it's an NVIDIA RTX 3080. It's a very lovely card. Completely outguns the entirety of the rest of my system, which is now about 9 years old, I think. But it is responsible for encoding this stream, showing this stream to your faces there, ladies and gentlemen, and of course running this game as well. And its little temperature gauge is displaying around about 40 degrees. It's currently under, I think, about 20 or 30% load, because I can't even see that the fans are spinning. So it's more than comfortable with what we are putting it through this evening, which is good, because I do say so myself. It looks rather lovely to these Giuliettas as well. It's a great mod, the Giulietta WTCR mod, and it is really looking great here. Now, as we watch Matt Daly looking great, heading through Murray's for what has been the conclusion to a fantastic drive so far here at Snetterton. He must be feeling confident heading into the reverse grid race. As long as he keeps the nose clean, it should be another good one as we now start the final lap of this race. A little bit of competition going on between Guy Swarbrick and Paul Brady. Now, Paul Brady, after getting clear of Anthony Gray, is now on a bit of a late race charge. So those drivers on the medium compound tyres, a little bit of false dawn as it turns out, not the compound that they were expecting it to be. So we see Paul Brady there heading down that Bentley straight, just as he did with Anthony Gray. He broke away from him. He romps away from Guy Swarbrick heading into Brundle and Nelson. Guy Swarbrick carrying as much pace as possible heading into those corners though, and has a look up the inside there. That was very brave into those couple of corners. Just about get a nose and keeps the pressure on Paul Brady. Has a look around the outside potentially at Coram, but isn't going to get the move done there. Might be Murray's his next available opportunity, because we know that Paul Brady is going to romp away. Locking up the brakes does Paul Brady, but that doesn't unfortunately provide hope for Guy Swarbrick and Anthony Gray behind. As we head down the centre straight once again, we are mindful of course of Matt Daly, who's heading onto the Bentley straight himself to finish this race. Guy Swarbrick then late on the brakes into Riches, locks them up, in fact keeps Anthony Gray behind, actually catches him out a little bit, and that allows Paul Brady to breathe easy. But for a second it looked to be rather that Guy Swarbrick was actually going to be able to get an overtake on, but it wasn't to be, unfortunately, for those two drivers behind him. We're back on board then with Matt Daly for the final time in race one. He heads through Coram, round Murray's for one last time, back onto the throttle, and I'm sure we'll be very satisfied with what has been a fantastic drive so far this evening. Dominated qualifying, dominated race 1, and now he has race 2 to conquer. It is Matt Daly who crosses the line to take the race victory. Congratulations, Matt, for a brilliant drive so far this weekend. A wiggle of celebration as well, thoroughly deserved. And there is Withinglis coming home to second place there. A quiet race for him, but still a well-deserved podium, as we see Barry Clayton actually bouncing over the curbs through Murray's in the background there. But Alan Matthews rather crosses the line to take third position and round out the podium, with Barry Clayton coming home fourth there. A little weight to Andy Craker behind. As we have these three drivers heading through Nelson and Brundle once again. No mishaps this time to report of, though, as we dive back on to the centre straight once again with Andy Craker in that slightly borrowed livery, comes across the line in a Colin Caniff's car to take fifth position. A strong drive for Andy Craker. Paul Millman as well, great recovery for him. In fact, when you consider he finished lap 1 at the bottom end of the field, he comes home P6 in the end. Great drive for Paul Millman then. And Paul Brady, after a strong late race charger, comes home P7. Anthony Gray P8. Guy Swarbrick settles for P9 in the end, but certainly didn't go down without a fight. And Rosie Oliver comes home P10 after an unfortunate start to race 1. And that rounds out the runners in race 1 at the end there. And we join you in just a few minutes' time for race 2, the reverse grid race, after a very late race overtake, if you will, as Withinglis gets one up on Matt Daly with an overtake heading into Brundle. Will we consider that one? I think we'll count that one, but no, we won't, of course. So we'll join you in just a few minutes for race 2, the reverse grid race here on round 3 at Snetterton. the action, ladies and gentlemen. We are ready to go for race 2, the reverse grid race, and let's have a look at the order. It is Paul Brady, Paul Millman. It's a front row of Pauls. Then we have Andy Craker and Barry Clayton. It's 6 red lights on the gantry though. And we are away. Let's have a look at who gets a decent launch here at Snetterton. Then it looks to be Paul Millman edges out Paul Brady, in fact, as we head into the first corner. Very wide there is Will Inglis. Over the pit exit, in fact, up into 4th position, making contact with Alan Matthews as he does so. Great start to the race for him. And edging out on the brakes there, Paul Brady just squeezing Millman as tight as he can through Montreal, but Paul Millman doesn't relent. In fact, it doesn't even compromise his exit. It's a great run through the right-hander for Paul Millman, although he's going to be on the outside through Palmer here, and Paul Brady maintains the lead of this race. Will Inglis up into 3rd position now. A great start to the race for him is completely undone by an off here down into 10th then for Will Inglis. What a shame. The commentator's curse clearly back in effect. So it's Paul Millman still in P2, Andy Craker in P3, Matt Daly up into P4, though he has certainly worked his way through the field rather nicely. Not quite as quickly as Will Inglis, but his nearest rival is rather disposed of, shall we say, at this point in time. So it's Matt Daly, apologies, no, it is Matt Daly. Matt Daly versus Alan Matthews, and that is Paul Millman off into the distance there on the run through the Bentley Straight. That oh so unfortunate place to go off is where Paul Millman has found himself now at the bottom end of the field. That makes Will Inglis our race leader? No, it does not. It's Paul Brady, our race leader, of course, and it's Paul Brady, Andy Craker, and then Alan Matthews completing the top 3. The run through Brundle and Nelson. I don't know if you saw, that was some Tokyo Drift style sideways action for, I believe that was Matt Daly, who's now in 4th position. Will Inglis for a brief moment apparently was up at front end of the field again, but I can say he's in fact always been in 9th now that Paul Millman has spun out. And certainly a slightly more chaotic start to the race than what we had in race 1. But we're back now on to the centre straight once again. It is Paul Brady, Andy Craker and Alan Matthews who round out the top 3 here, but there's certainly plenty of pressure from behind because there is Matt Daly on the charge. Interesting to know, Anthony Gray and Guy Swarbrick still on the medium compound of tyres, so they've decided no, they're sticking to their guns. It might have been what they've set the car up with. It's what they are most used to, so why not go with that medium compound of tyre. As we can see, the back end for Andy Craker actually stepping out a little bit through Palmer there. So a good recovery, hasn't lost out too much speed there. Will have lost a little bit, of course, and in fact there is Alan Matthews capitalising on that. Has a look up the inside, late on the brakes, actually making contact with Andy Craker as he does so. Compromises his run through Agostini ever so slightly. That allows Andy Craker to have a look up the inside, heading through Hamilton once again. A puff of smoke in the face of Matt Daly. Matt Daly now making it near enough 3 wide as we head through down towards Williams in just a moment's time. And that was certainly an interesting way to navigate that middle sector. I keep calling it the middle sector, the Sector 2 area, because in my mind that should obviously be Sector 2, but of course, first sector on this track just runs all the way down to pretty much the end of the lap. So we'll call it the mid-Sector 1, the Sector 0.5 area there. In my slight confusion, we have of course seen Andy Craker now take the lead of this race with Matt Daly up in P2. Paul Brady drops down to P4. Nelson and Brundle providing plenty of action once again, just like they did in the Formula 1 cars. They do so as corners as well. Matt Daly now half a second off from Andy Craker here. A puff of smoke already as we head through Murray's once again. Drivers really leaving it as late as possible in this race weekend to brake, causing ever so slight lockups, although the Giulietta is a little bit of a fan of those lockups as we're talking about in race 1. Unload that rear axle, it's got no weight on it, and of course you're going to get some form of locking as the tyres just have nothing to press them down onto the tarmac though. Certainly Andy Craker will feel like he has someone pressing him down onto the tarmac, and that is Matt Daly. Matt Daly having a look up the inside there on Montreal, and they are still side by side, but compromising his run through the corner. Actually, Andy Craker good on the defence here, making that Giulietta as wide as possible as we head through Palmer now. The number 73 car, that's definitely what a number 73 looks like, of Andy Craker as we head through to Agostini. It's definitely number 73. Still number 73. Don't look too closely. Squint. Maybe we should turn the resolution back down again to 240p, and then you can't see the fact that it's definitely not the number 7. It is the number 73. We're on board with Alan Matthews now as we head through to Williams in just a moment's time. The top three then, in all this battling, have certainly slowed themselves down in comparison to race 1, because there are Paul Brady and Anthony Gray still very much keeping up with them. As we head down the Bentley Straight, once again, we are going to pay very close attention as to what goes on here through Brundle and Nelson, because it is certainly going to provide some interesting action, as it always does there. The back end on Andy Craker's car, certainly on a knife edge, as was Matt Daly's, though. Matt Daly is off and into the grass. What a shame for his race. He's actually able to recover relatively quickly there, but does drop down to 5th. That promotes Paul Brady up into 4th, and Alan Matthews up a position as well, I believe. No, he's just about made it ahead of front of Anthony Gray, so he's up into 4th. Still a good recovery nonetheless, and Paul Brady says thank you very much, and Andy Craker and Alan Matthews can breathe a sigh of relief. Now at this stage, what these two, arguably, I'm not going to go out and say it myself, arguably slightly slower drivers than Matt Daly, or they've got at least less pace this race weekend. What they might opt to do is say, come on, let's work together. Let's now use this opportunity while Matt Daly is kept at bay by Paul Brady. Let's work together and try and break away. Of course, these are touring car drivers. They're not going to do that. They're going to have any opportunity to be scrapping it out. As we head through Montreal now, Alan Matthews looked up the inside, and that didn't matter anyway, because in just a moment's time, Matt Daly was able to get ahead of Paul Brady and back up into 3rd position. So not all is lost, really, considering his big off heading through Nelson there. As we now watch Barry Clayton once again. He's actually made a position now. Apologies, no, that is Paul Brady on Barry Clayton, back up into 5th. At one point, Barry Clayton just about getting out in front, but Paul Brady is up into 5th. Now, I should mention, clearly, as if we needed more evidence, just how much this tight, immense battling slows you down, and I do hope, I'm not at all worried, really. I hope we get more of this fantastic battling. Slows you down. Paul Brady in the previous race was comfortably in the 155s, could have been in the 54s if he went for an absolute dash of a quali run. It's currently his fastest lap, as you can see there, bottom left-hand corner of the screen, a 157.2. Bear in mind, we are 3, make that 4 laps into this race, really, 8 minutes in. And still no fast lap from him just yet, as Barry Clayton has a few issues on the braking zone heading through Brundle there. He drops back down into 7th, in fact, because I should mention, in all of this, Rosie Oliver, we haven't really focused on at all really so far in race 2, has had a fantastic drive in comparison to race 1 in particular, up in 6th, so driving very nicely indeed. Willie Gliss has recovered somewhat from his earlier off, is now up into 7th position ahead of Barry Clayton. So all this immense battling has kept the field so tight, so compact. We are 8 minutes, make that 9 minutes into this race, and the field in its entirety is separated by 10 seconds. What fantastic racing. Well done to all of those involved. We're looking though at Matt Daly against Alan Matthews. Now Andy Craker has relented down into 3rd position at this point in time, as we see Anthony Gray and Paul Brady just in the background there enjoying their own battling, but the battling we're focusing on is Matt Daly and Alan Matthews now as we head down through Agostini in just a moment's time. Matt Daly having a look up the outside. No, he says, I'll go for the inside instead. No, make that the outside once more. Fantastic. Fantastic pressure being applied by Matt Daly here as we head through Hamilton, the left-hander, in just a moment's time. Meanwhile, Andy Craker has a brief opportunity to breathe somewhat, because Anthony Gray is certainly under pressure from Paul Brady. Just behind them, Rosie Oliver, Willie Gliss and Barry Clayton. We have 5 cars covering just about a second and a half. Fantastic opportunity for some racing action here. I don't know what I want more, actually, as we head down the Bentley Straight once again. And we see Matt Daly is gaining ever so slightly by just hundredths of a second each time we look at the timing system. Has a brief look to see if he can potentially think about a move through Brundle, but that was going to be very risky indeed. And he certainly knows about risk heading through Nelson in particular in this race. As we head through Brundle and Nelson with these drivers now, we see that Anthony Gray has lost out big time. Of course, that is one of the other big concerns with pack battling like this it's all well and good being fourth and having a great, fantastic battle going on behind you with 5 cars involved, about a second half spread. You make one small error, you drop from 4th to 9th, and that has just about happened with Anthony Gray, unfortunately for him, on that medium compound of tyre. Sees himself down in P7 once again. As we look at Riches, Alan Matthews very late on the brakes there. Fantastic move to take back the lead of this race. When Matt Daly thought it could have all been said and done, Alan Matthews left nothing on the table in terms of his last minute braking there. Heading through Montreal then, he still leads this race, but just a 10th behind Matt Daly. Is going to do everything he can to take back that lead position of this race. In all of this, Andy Craker is very much keeping up with the two cars out in front of him, as we have a big collision actually between Paul Brady and Will Inglis. Paul Brady, unfortunately, has been completely spat off, is down in 8th, make that 9th and potentially 10th now. What a shape for Paul Brady in this race. Back on board then with Matt Daly as we continue further into the lap. 4/10 of a second separating these two drivers now. Barry Clayton is up into 6th ahead of Rosie Oliver now. Anthony Gray has somehow been able to work his way back up into 5th, owing to all of the kind of chaos that has gone on in this mid-pack battle, and all of that chaos has actually resulted in what was once a 10-second field spread. It's now becoming 20 seconds field spread. Field spread, I'll try that again, all of a sudden. And all of this, Will Inglis has worked his way up into 4th position, so a great recovery drive for him so far. Just remember, not long ago, in fact only about 10 minutes ago, he was at the very bottom end of the field. Now, currently on the heels of, well, I say on the heels of the podium, but he's currently running in 4th, is best of the rest, and if he plays his cards right, keeps his pace up. The top 3, remember, are in the midst of battle. He could find himself in the lead of this race. We're going to go on board though once again though. Speaking of the lead of this race, with the 2 race leaders, it is Alan Matthews and Matt Daly heading down the centre straight once again. Looking around the outside, Matt Daly thinks about it but can't make that move stick, so has a look around the inside, takes a tighter line. In fact, that should set him up well for Montreal, but it won't, because he's strong on the defensive there. Alan Matthews takes the inside line. He should be able to wash out a little bit wide to defend once again from Matt Daly. Does just that and has made that Giulietta as wide as possible. Keeps Matt Daly hot on his heels there, but nothing that he can do, because look at just how tight that gap is now. Only 1/10, 2/10 in fact now, as we head down towards Agostini. You'd think in all of this I've spent so long now it's actually been years now worth of watching some fantastic battling, that I'd have picked up a thing or two, but I could certainly not replicate the fine job that these drivers are doing out on track this evening. This has been a fantastic evening's worth of racing so far. I was about to say highlight of the season so far. That is a particular feat, given I've commentated on 2 race evenings so far, and this is the first one that I can see at more slideshow pace, as these 2 are NASCAR style, actually making contact with each other, bump drafting, and trying to get as much slipstream as possible as Matt Daly heads onto that Bentley straight once again. Has a little bit of a speed advantage, but is certainly not got the track position advantage. Does he care about that? I don't think he does. What a move by Matt Daly. Yes, there was contact, and I'm sure Alan Matthews will be less than pleased with that, but the fact that he even got into that position is certainly impressive nonetheless, although I am sure he'll want to give that back. He does give that back. What a courteous move by Matt Daly. He just went too deep into the corner and was never going to get stopped without making that contact with Alan Matthews. Still, great to see him give back the position, but still, got to commend him for at least trying. What a fantastic effort there. As we see in the distance, it's Will Inglis. Will Inglis now clear of the cars behind. It is very much focusing on hunting down the top 3, and is doing a great job of that as well. As now it's Matt Daly against Andy Craker here, as we head through Riches once again. This is looking a little bit better for Alan Matthews. I don't know what damage he's carrying. I didn't quite get enough time to see what damage both Matt Daly and Alan Matthews are carrying after that small coming together heading through Nelson. It won't be terminal, of course, but no, I'd be surprised if it's completely not, given the speeds, of course, involved of heading into Sector 2 at that stage on track. We're on board with Alan Matthews then, as he heads with half a second gap behind him on to the middle sector once again. Of course. I say the middle sector. It's the 0.5 sector. It's the middle of the first sector. That's what we're going with here. As we get onto the Bentley straight in just a moment's time, Matt Daly has cleared Andy Craker and is very much setting his sights on Alan Matthews. Once again, has a much cleaner run onto that back straight. So this could be the move that we're expecting to see just a couple of laps ago. As Matt Daly does in fact get a nose out in front, doesn't once again have the ideal track position, is obviously going to be much more cautious this time round and has to relinquish that position once again to Alan Matthews, who takes the race lead, who seems to just have, I'd say in terms of cornering performance at least, whether it be a setup change, not quite sure what's going on here, maybe tyres setup, something like that, seems to have the upper hand at this point in time, is able to just position his car in a way on the defensive that means that while Matt Daly can have a nose in, can put the pressure on, is not in a comfortable position to make a move stick, although will that be slightly different this time around as we head onto that centre straight. They are close together, but are they close enough? I could say that Alan Matthews is just about a car's length in front. There's not a car length between them, of course, so they are pretty much bumper to bumper now as we head through Riches. It's going to be Matt Daly who has the inside line into Montreal. Alan Matthews wasn't able to defend quick enough this time round, and it's going to be Matt Daly who exits the corner in the lead of this race. Will it be? No. Alan Matthews takes the long way around, actually gets the faster run through the right-hander as a result, has the inside line as well, but compromises, goes too late on the brakes, goes too deep into the corner, and gives Matt Daly the position in the end. What a battle that was, and I have a feeling it might not be over just yet. As we head now through Agostini, Alan Matthews is keeping up as much as possible with Matt Daly. While all of this is happening, Will Inglis has brought down the gap to the top three to just 5 seconds. Meanwhile, further elsewhere in the field, we have Rosie Oliver and Anthony Gray now heading through towards Hamilton in just a moment's time there. And Rosie Oliver certainly putting the pressure on now. Rosie has the soft compounder tyre, I'd argue has the tyre advantage at this stage in the race. Was actually slower on that previous lap with a 56.8 compared to Anthony Gray's 58. Apologies, no, definitely not slow, of course. I've just forgotten maths. It's a 58.3 in the previous lap for Anthony Gray and a 56.8 for Rosie Oliver. And their best laps are pretty much equal. So this could be a very interesting battle indeed. Because while technically on paper Anthony Gray should have the better tyres at this stage in the race, what we saw in race 1 seems to argue otherwise. A big lock-up for Anthony Gray there heading into Nelson. This track, I'd argue, is so well set up for pushing a front-wheel drive touring car to its absolute limit. It really makes them uncomfortable while also showing off some of their strengths, the likes of the really twisty stuff. A really well set up front-wheel drive car in the low speed is going to do very well indeed. And this car certainly does so, the likes of Montreal, where you can take that wider line and carry the speed forward and actually get the nose out in front. And you've got Palmer as well. You've got William Murray's as well is another strong overtaking opportunity which might not be available in a bigger car. This car does very well at, but it also, this track also pushes the cars in ways which perhaps it doesn't enjoy so much. You've got the likes of Brundle and Nelson Coram there. So a fantastic track. I've raved on enough about it so far this evening, but a great track to go racing in the Giulietta WTCR. As we have a look once again at the front runners here, the gap now standing at still under a second, but now at 0.7 seconds. So Matt Daly is trying to break away as much as possible. We do only have 5 minutes to go in this race. So let's see what type of lead he can break out, if he can break out a lead, or whether Alan Matthews is going to keep that pressure on for the rest of this race. Alan Matthews, it turns out in race 1, a little bit of a sleeping giant, did of course come away with a podium in the end, but not quite the race he would have wanted. Race 2, I think, certainly more demonstrative of his performance potential so far this weekend. So having a look at the championship as it stands so far, we've got just over 5 minutes to go in this race, and these are the two closest cars on track. It's Matt Daly, of course, who leads this championship with 68 points to his name, but Will Inglis not too far behind at all with 61 points, and then there is a notable gap down to Alan Matthews with 36 points. to his name, so this will be a great race for his championship hopes with Andy Craker on 32, so he'll be wanting to try and break away from that mid-pack ever so slightly. However, Andy Craker is just behind him in terms of this race. Then we have Barry Clayton on 28, Jack Hodson on 21, Rosie Oliver on 17, Paul Brady on 16, Paul Millman on 8, and then we have Guy Swarbrick on 5 here. Andy Gray on 4 as well. In fact, this will be a great weekend for his championship points tally as well. Matt Daly will be extending his race lead, but Alan Matthews will be, I think, another one of the big winners so far this weekend. The gap now standing at 2 seconds. Matt Daly breaking away somewhat from Alan Matthews now. As we see, of course, the gap you see on screen is a gap to the leader. And I can tell you that Will Inglis has been hunting down Andy Craker, now only at about 1.8 seconds down to Andy Craker. And just as I say, I do apologise there to Rosie Oliver and Anthony Gray. Commentators curse in full effect quite clearly. They dropped down a couple of positions there. Paul Millman capitalising on that up into 6th position. Just under 5 minutes to go in this race then, ladies and gentlemen, and what a race weekend it has been. The battle for the lead in particular in this race was absolutely enthralling. Multiple stages, in fact, as we jump back onto the Senna straight and race through the reverse grid race, when often this race can be even more chaotic, and that of course has its own value and brings its own fun. But this reverse race clearly doing exactly what it was intended to do, and bring that field closer together and make the racing more competitive, because the field spread stands at just 37 seconds. P1 to P10, if we bring that down to yeah, that's a very nice field spread. In fact, when we had about 1 minute towards the end of race 1, race 2 here, we can, if we are at the right part of the track, probably near enough, just about see everyone on the same frame in the camera there, as everyone is at least on this lead lap by now. Guys, we'll just cross the line to get ready to start one of the final few laps of this race, rather. Andy Craker, meanwhile, now is very much no longer concerned with the 2 cars out in front. They are a few seconds up the road. Is very much concerned with keeping his podium and trying to ensure that he is on the bottom step of that podium, receives his trophy at the end of this race, because Will Inglis certainly wants it now, as we head down through towards Williams in just a moment's time here onto the Bentley straight. We will see which car is looking stronger in terms of straight line speed, in terms of setup, but I can tell you in terms of current pace, it is Will Inglis who wins out with a 155.1 that last lap, compared to Andy Craker's 156.2. In terms of the outright fastest lap, it goes into Will Inglis' favour as well, a 154.7 in comparison to Andy Craker's 155.5. And as we head through Nelson and Brundle, it's looking a little bit cleaner than what we've seen in this race so far. Not quite as chaotic, but still certainly exhilarating. You're always slightly on the edge of your seat heading through those corners, wondering as to whether or not the car is going to make it through. But look at Will Inglis heading through the right-hander of Coram. A fantastic, just sticking with it there, just holding on for dear life, and goes side by side with Andy Craker. They make contact as they head into Murray's there, and in the end, Andy Craker does in fact win out. But I think Will Inglis might have taken a bit of a brave pill heading into this race, because that was certainly a bold move through Coram. You don't often see that as we head through Riches now. Predicted this time around for Andy Craker is a 155.6, whereas Will Inglis taking a slightly wider line through Montreal there. That could be key into one of his key areas where he's making time in comparison to Andy Craker. Let's have a look at his predicted time. It is a 155 flat, so potentially into the 154s. The back end actually stepping out on Will Inglis' car there. That is exactly how I like to have a front wheel drive car set up, so it kind of guides you a little bit into the corner, feels playful, and you know it's not going to just completely wash out. It might be, not at all be, I'm not at all a racing driver or someone who's even relatively quick behind the wheel of a car, but that's just how I like it. I'm sure people would rather correct me on that, and you're more than welcome to, because I could do with learning a little bit more about how to get a car around the track quickly. But as we stay with these two drivers, then Andy Craker, as he did in race 1, in fact, making that Giulietta as wide as possible. I I think actually that was full right-hand lock there, and that's what that puff of smoke was, as the car was understeering its way through the corner and just lost grip on the front axle. But we see Willingliss having a look up the inside, heading into Brundle. Now it's going to be very brave, and it's only going to end one way, and it has only ended one way for these two front runners here, who can get back on track quick enough. It is going to be, luckily for these two, no major ill effect in this race for them. Andy Craker remains ahead of Willingliss, and the margin stays at about the same as well. So that is what we like to see, ladies and gentlemen. As we see, Matt Daly has just crossed the line to start the final lap of this race now with a 154.772. His best lap in the 153 is the only drive, in fact, all weekend to get into the 53s in race trim as well as quali trim. He's absolutely flying along, as we see, as are Andy Craker and Willingliss heading into riches once more. Willingliss having a look up the inside there, the back end looking like it could want to get away from him once again. I have a feeling his setup is very knife edge, if you will. Heading into Montreal, though, he has the inside line here, takes the position up into third position for Willingliss. Will he remain there, though? Only time will tell, as we headed down towards Palmer once again for what will be the final time for these two drivers now, as he just about defends the inside line there, leaves a very small gap, but certainly not Giulietta width, as we run down towards Agostini once more. Andy Craker, after fighting so long for this third position, is certainly not going to give up easily. He's going to fight until the very end against Willingliss. Now, as we head down a little bit closer now to the Bentley Straight. Speaking of the Bentley Straight, here is Matt Daly onto that Bentley Straight. He's broken away from Alan Matthews somewhat and should just be focused on bringing it home safely for a bit of a Grand Slam weekend for Matt Daly. Andy Craker has a brave look around the outside there, runs out of tarmac as he does so, in fact, and has to remain in P4 for now. Onto that Bentley Straight then. Who's going to win out in terms of straight line speed? I can tell you it looks to be that Willingliss ever so slightly has the slightly faster car, but they are pretty much even Stevens there. Not much to discern between those two cars at all. We're going to jump aboard with Matt Daly once more, as he is now heading around Murray's for the final time in this race weekend. And what a race weekend it has been for him. He dominated qualifying. In the end, he dominated race 1. And after a strong drive, he dominates race 2 as well. It is Matt Daly who crosses the line to take the race 2 victory. Congratulating Matt Daly for a fantastic drive all around. Alan Matthews comes home P2. And who will it be coming home in P3 then? We are on to the centre straight for one final time here. A half race long battle for P3 in the end. Rounding out the podium, it is Willingliss and Andy Craker. A fantastic drive there. Well done to both involved. As we see Barry Clayton, quiet race for him in the end. As it turned out to be, he comes home with P5, so some good points on the board for him. Then we see Paul Brady coming home onto the centre straight. Now, I have seen in the past a couple of cars running out of fuel here as drivers try and get as close as possible to the fuel margins, but that doesn't seem to be happening so far this weekend, which is nice to see. Paul Brady comes home 6th, Rosie Oliver comes home 7th, Anthony Gray will be coming home 8th position, Paul Middleman coming home 9th, and then Guy Swarbrick rounding out the field in 10th to round out what has been a fantastic evening's worth of racing. Congratulations to all involved there. And Victory Donuts haven't featured so far this season. I fear they may be gone, ladies and gentlemen, which makes me very sad. But we have Victory Drifts instead, which is very impressive given we're a front-wheel drive car. Heading down the Bentley Straight then, the two race leaders, are they going to come home in tandem? No, Alan Matthews has decided that this race hasn't quite ended and is going to take P1 in this race to the pits then, as Matt Daly's now just showing off and has decided that he doesn't need his rear tyres anymore, as Willingliss has gone to space. That's all I can think of that's happened there. He's actually just... oh no, there he is. There is, of course, the pit shortcut here, which I was amazed back, I think it was a couple of years ago now, Colin Knief finding that pit shortcut. I had no idea it existed. And it was actually the season finale where he used that. And yeah, there is that little pit shortcut, takes you straight back to the pit lane. You can drive over the bridge, in fact. And we're watching, actually, Matt Daly and Willingliss completely disappear off into the distance. We can't see that anymore because the cameras can't follow it, but I'm on the timing screen and they are actually... there they are, just in the background there. They've gone off-roading. I think they've gone to have a look at the forest, I think. Oh, yep, that was a big crash between the two drivers and with the forest potentially as well. Rosie Oliver is the only driver who's decided to return to the pit lane sensibly and probably won't receive a 50-year penalty as a result, just like Esteban Ocon. These two actually, we can't see it on the screen unless they glitch out in some way, shape or form, are still out there in the forest somewhere doing God knows what. But there's plenty of collision warnings coming up on screen. It's only Matt Daly left now. Our race victor might not be featuring anymore in this series because he's currently lost in a forest. And that is all. So thank you very much for watching, ladies and gentlemen. I hope to see you for next week's race. And, of course, the touring car action, which returns in a fortnight. Thank you very much for watching, and good night.